The unknown signal. It was a normal day on Earth, or so it seemed. People went about their routines, busy with their jobs, school, and daily tasks. But somewhere in the vast reaches of space, something extraordinary was happening. Something no one on Earth could have imagined. In the early hours of the morning, a strange signal was detected by the world's most advanced satellite observatories. It wasn't a random burst of space noise. This was something deliberate, something intelligently designed. The signal wasn't like anything the scientists had seen before. It was too structured, too purposeful. It was like a message, but no one knew who it was for or who had sent it. Dr. Emily Green, a leading astrophysicist, was the first to notice the signal. She had spent her life studying space, listening for the faint whispers of distant stars and planets. But this was different. This signal was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It wasn't just a simple pattern of radio waves. It was complex and precise. It carried meaning, and Dr. Green felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what it could mean. "John, come here," she called out to her colleague, Dr. John Ramirez, who worked beside her. "You need to see this." John quickly approached her workstation, his face crunching in confusion as he looked at the strange wave patterns on the screen. He had been a scientist for years, but this was something new. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. "Is this a glitch in the system?" Emily shook her head, her heart racing. "No, John, this isn't a glitch. This is a message. Someone, or something, is trying to communicate with us." John leaned in, squinting at the screen. The signal was so precise, so structured, that it was clear it wasn't just random noise from space. It was a deliberate act. But who could be sending it? The signal didn't last long. Only a few seconds, but it was long enough to confirm that this was no ordinary discovery. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be an alien civilization? Or was it something else? The thought of contacting extraterrestrial life was both thrilling and terrifying. Dr. Green immediately called a meeting with the top scientists at the observatory. As the news spread across the globe, the world's attention was drawn to this strange signal. News outlets began reporting the event, and social media exploded with speculation. Was this the beginning of first contact? Had humanity finally found proof that we were not alone in the universe? Across the world, government officials and military leaders were informed of the discovery. The signal was being studied carefully, and teams of experts were gathered to analyze every detail. The problem was, the signal was unlike any known language. It wasn't in any of the formats that Earth scientists had been trained to recognize. It didn't resemble any human language, nor did it match any known extraterrestrial signals that had been previously recorded. The military's top cryptographers were called in to decode the message. They worked around the clock, trying every possible method to interpret the signal. Could it be some kind of warning? An invitation? Or was it simply a test of humanity's ability to respond? But as hours turned into days, the signal didn't get any clearer. The more they tried to decode it, the more mysterious it became. Some experts suggested that it might not be meant for Earth at all. It could be a signal that had been traveling through space for millions of years, possibly from a long-gone civilization. Others believed it was directed at Earth specifically, a message meant for humanity. But why now? And who was sending it? In the middle of the confusion, something even stranger happened. The signal, which had been quiet for a while, suddenly grew stronger. It wasn't just a faint whisper from the stars anymore. Now it was unmistakable. The signal pulsed with a regular beat, like a heartbeat. It was as if the sender was trying to get their attention. The signal now filled the airwaves with a strange energy that could be felt by anyone who was paying attention. Dr. Emily Green stood in front of the large display screen, her eyes fixed on the pulsing pattern. The signal seemed to be repeating in a rhythmic fashion, almost like a code. Could it be trying to tell them something? She felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had always dreamed of discovering life beyond Earth. But now that it was happening, she wasn't sure what to think. "What do we do now?" John asked, looking at her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "We wait," Emily replied, "and we listen." But waiting was not easy. The world was watching, waiting for answers. Governments scrambled to prepare for whatever might come next. Would the signal lead to peace, or was it a sign of something darker? As the signal continued to pulse, scientists and military leaders agreed on one thing: humanity needed to be ready. The signal might be harmless, or it could be the beginning of something far more dangerous. No one knew for sure, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. As the days passed, the world held its breath. The unknown signal had captured everyone's attention. The message was out there, floating in the vastness of space, and humanity was no longer alone. What would come next? Only time would tell. But one thing was clear: humanity had just received its first invitation to the stars, and they were ready to answer. The response. The days following the mysterious signal felt like a countdown to something monumental. The entire world had been thrust into a new reality, where the possibility of first contact seemed no longer a question of if, but when. News broadcasts, social media feeds, and even dinner table conversations were consumed by the signal. Humanity stood on the edge of a new frontier, unsure whether it was about to embrace a new chapter in history or face the consequences of its curiosity. Dr. Emily Green's team worked tirelessly, analyzing the signal and attempting to decode its meaning. But as time passed, they found no breakthrough. Despite their best efforts, the message remained a mystery. Some scientists suggested that perhaps the signal wasn't meant to be understood immediately, that it was a test or a way of gauging humanity's reaction. But that didn't explain the strange sense of urgency that pulsed through the signal itself, as if it was waiting for something. At the United Nations, leaders from every nation gathered for an emergency summit. Military leaders, intelligence experts, and scientists came together to form a unified response to the alien signal. No one knew for sure whether the message was peaceful or hostile, but they all agreed on one thing: Earth needed to respond. If this was an invitation, they couldn't ignore it. But if it was a threat, humanity had to be ready. The tension in the air was palpable as world leaders debated their next move. Should they send a message back, or would that be seen as a sign of aggression? What if the aliens had been watching Earth for years, waiting for the perfect moment to make contact? There was no guidebook for this. This was uncharted territory. After days of discussion, it was decided. Humanity would send a reply, but it would be cautious. An acknowledgement, but not a declaration. They would transmit a simple message back into space: "We are here. We hear you." The wording was neutral, non-threatening, and simple enough to avoid misinterpretation. The message was broadcast from the largest communication arrays around the world, transmitted to the deepest corners of space. A sense of relief washed over the world's leaders as the signal was sent. For now, humanity had done its part. They had reached out to the unknown. Now, it was time to wait. But the waiting felt endless. Hours turned into days. The world was on edge, watching every satellite feed and communication channel. Would the aliens respond? What would they say? Or worse, what if there was no response at all? Then, just as the tension was becoming unbearable, it happened. The first response came not through the expected channels, but through an entirely different method. The sky itself seemed to change. People across the world looked up in confusion and awe. The skies, once clear and blue, now shimmered with a strange, almost ethereal glow. It wasn't a storm or an atmospheric anomaly. It was as if the heavens themselves were reacting to the message. The glow spread, slowly at first, then more rapidly. It wasn't just above one city. It was happening all over the planet. From New York to Tokyo, from Cairo to Buenos Aires, the sky shifted in a way that seemed impossible. The colors rippled, like the surface of a calm lake disturbed by an unseen force. Dr. Green watched the scene unfold from her laboratory, her pulse quickening. This is a response," she whispered to herself. She had seen countless strange phenomena in her career, but nothing like this. The sky was communicating something, but what? Was this the answer they had been waiting for? Or was this some form of alien communication, too complex for humanity to understand? But before she could fully process the sight, a new signal arrived. This time, it was different. This wasn't a simple pulse of waves like the first message. The new signal was far more advanced, full of data that was both sophisticated and unnerving. It seemed to cascade in waves, carrying something beyond language. It wasn't like any digital code or written language that humans knew. It was a mixture of tones, vibrations, and images, like a complex pattern formed from both light and sound. The images were unlike anything seen before. Strange landscapes, alien structures, and beings of indescribable shape and size. The world's top minds scrambled to interpret the message. It wasn't a text or an audio communication. It was a hybrid of visual and auditory information. The images were abstract but somehow familiar, like a dream that lingered in your mind, just out of reach. "What do we do now?" John Ramirez asked, looking over Emily's shoulder as the strange images flashed across the screen. "This is more than we could have ever predicted." Emily's mind raced. The signal was too advanced to decode immediately, but the meaning was clear. The aliens were aware of humanity's response and were sending something back. But what were they trying to convey? Was it a warning? A gesture of goodwill? Or something more sinister? The signal contained a final piece of information that sent a shiver through Dr. Green's spine. Among the images, a phrase appeared, not in any known language, but in a universal pattern of symbols. It was a phrase that repeated twice. "Prepare for what comes next." The words echoed in Emily's mind, their meaning clear as day, even if they had no direct translation. Humanity had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. Prepare for what comes next. The words seemed to hang in the air like a dark cloud, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Was this a warning? Was it a promise of things to come? Or had humanity unknowingly sparked the beginning of something far beyond their control? As the sky shimmered with strange lights and the message continued to unfold, the people of Earth could only wait. The true meaning of the message remained a mystery, but one thing was certain: the aliens had responded, and the future of humanity had just become far more uncertain. The countdown had begun, and no one knew what was waiting on the other side. The arrival. The world's collective breath seemed to catch in the same moment when the skies finally cleared, leaving a silence that felt unnatural. The strange shimmer in the atmosphere had faded, but the air still felt heavy with anticipation. People around the globe stared at the horizon, hoping for some sign of what was to come. Earth had made its first contact with an alien species, but now, the question was, what did that truly mean? For days, there was no communication, no new signals, no strange lights in the sky, just a deafening calm. Governments and scientists scrambled to analyze the data from the mysterious message, trying to piece together its true meaning. Were the aliens preparing for something, or were they simply watching, waiting for humanity's next move? Dr. Emily Green and her team worked day and night, piecing together the fragments of the alien communication. She couldn't shake the words that had flashed on their screens. Prepare for what comes next. They were haunting. There was an ominous weight behind them. As much as Emily wanted to believe the message was peaceful, something deep inside her knew that it wasn't that simple. Then, one morning, the skies changed again. But this time, it wasn't just a shimmer or a glow. The change was far more drastic, and it happened all at once. Across every major city on Earth, people looked up and saw something that defied all logic. A massive ship, bigger than any human-made structure, appeared in the sky. It wasn't a spaceship in the traditional sense. This was something far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Its surface was smooth, dark, and gleaming, as though it was made of a material not found on Earth. The ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest of Earth's skyscrapers. Its shape was unfamiliar, almost as if it didn't belong to any category of craft humanity had ever known. The ship didn't land. Instead, it hovered, suspended just above the ground in a perfect stillness. The world's first reaction was a mixture of awe and terror. People stared up in silence, not knowing whether to run or stay still. What could this ship mean? Why had it come? The military was quick to react, scrambling jets and drones to monitor the ship. But no matter how close they got, they couldn't seem to get a clear shot at it. It was as though the ship was aware of their every movement, almost toying with them. Dr. Emily Green watched the live footage on her screen, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for, the moment the alien visitors had been waiting for. But why didn't they speak? Why was the ship simply hovering, waiting? The world's leaders came together once more, this time with an overwhelming sense of urgency. There had been no immediate threat, no attack. The ship's arrival was peaceful, if unsettling. Still, the question remained, what did the visitors want? As time passed, humanity waited for a response, for a sign. The tension was unbearable. Dr. Green's team worked frantically to analyze the ship's technology, trying to find some clue as to who, or what, was inside. But there was no way to penetrate the ship's exterior. The ship was emitting a constant signal, but it was unlike anything humanity could decode. It was as if the ship itself was alive, pulsating with an energy that humanity could not begin to understand. Then, on the third day of the ship's hovering presence, a message finally came. But this time, it wasn't in the form of a signal. No, this was far more direct. From the ship's center, a series of intricate patterns began to form in the sky. They appeared as glowing symbols, ancient, yet unfamiliar. The symbols were being projected in the air around the ship, creating a holographic display that could be seen by anyone within miles of the ship's location. Dr. Green and her colleagues immediately began to analyze the symbols. But once again, they were stumped. These weren't simple images or symbols. They were complex, multi-dimensional patterns that seemed to defy logic. They shifted, expanded, and contracted, forming shapes that seemed to move of their own accord. Each symbol appeared to be part of a larger puzzle, but the pieces didn't fit. Despite the confusion, there was a sense of purpose in the display. The patterns were deliberate, as if they were trying to tell humanity something important. Then, without warning, the ship emitted a low, resonant hum. It wasn't a sound that came from any human-made source. It was as if the ship itself was vibrating with power. The hum filled the air, and for a moment, everything around the ship seemed to stop. The wind ceased, the birds fell silent, and even the bustle of the cities below seemed to fade. The hum wasn't just a noise. It was a sensation that people could feel deep in their bones, like a pulse of energy that connected them all. In that moment, it became clear this wasn't just a visit. The ship was a messenger, and it was waiting for humanity to respond in a way that was more than just words. It was waiting for action. Dr. Green's thoughts raced. What do we do now? She whispered to herself, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was this the beginning of a peaceful exchange, or had humanity been drawn into something far darker? Was the ship waiting to offer something, or was it testing humanity, testing its resolve, its willingness to act? And then something even stranger happened. The ship began to retract. Slowly, methodically, it began to ascend, pulling away from the Earth's atmosphere. It wasn't leaving, though. The ship wasn't departing. It was simply changing its position, as if it were preparing for something larger. All across the world, people watched in stunned silence as the ship hovered in the sky, now in a position that seemed to indicate it was about to initiate something. The message was clear. Humanity was being tested, but what the test was, no one could yet say. As the ship hovered, the earth below seemed to hold its breath. The question remained unanswered. Was this the beginning of a peaceful coexistence with the unknown, or the start of an interstellar war? Whatever the answer, it was coming soon, and the entire planet would have to be ready. humanity's secret weapon. The world had held its breath for days, watching the alien ship silently hover above the planet, waiting for a sign, any sign, that would tell humanity what the next move should be. As the ship's presence lingered, the tension began to shift from confusion and awe to an overwhelming sense of urgency. Governments, military officials, and scientists continued to scramble, but no one had a clear answer to the questions that kept echoing in every mind. What did the aliens want? And more importantly, what were they prepared to do if humanity could not meet their expectations? In the shadows of these global discussions, something else was happening. Something that had been quietly developing for years, far away from the eyes of the public. But now, it was humanity's only hope. Deep within a covered facility, under layers of security, a team of top-tier scientists and military strategists had been working on a project that was supposed to be a backup plan, a final line of defense in case humanity was ever faced with an existential threat. A threat like the one now hanging above them. Dr. Emily Green, still trying to decode the enigmatic signals from the alien ship, was unaware of this project. At least, not in its full scope. She was just one of the millions of people watching the ship in the sky, trying to understand its purpose. But now, she was about to learn that the key to humanity's survival wasn't in the stars or in the strange messages. It was here, on Earth. Inside the facility, a small group of elite engineers and physicists had built something that could rival the very technology the alien visitors used to cross the vast distances of space. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. No lasers, no bombs, no mass destruction. It was something far more sophisticated. A device capable of harnessing and manipulating the fundamental forces of nature, something that could alter reality itself on a molecular level. Dr. Gregory Patel, the project's lead scientist, stood before the team with a grave expression. He had spent years working on the concept, perfecting the technology. It was designed to be a last resort measure, an option in case humanity ever faced an overwhelming alien invasion. Now, however, it seemed to be their only hope. "This isn't just a weapon," Dr. Patel said quietly to his team. "It's a solution. It's the only way we might have a chance against them." The device was called the resonator, a machine designed to manipulate the space-time continuum itself, capable of creating a force field around Earth, shielding it from any external attack. The scientists had designed it with one specific goal in mind: to give humanity enough time to find a peaceful resolution, or at the very least, defend the planet long enough to prepare for a counterattack. But even Dr. Patel was uncertain. Could the resonator work against an alien race with technology that was millions of years ahead of theirs? They didn't know, but they had no other choice. The device was hidden deep beneath a mountain range in an underground complex, shielded from any prying eyes. Only a handful of people in the world knew of its existence, and Dr. Patel had sworn them all to secrecy. It wasn't the kind of technology that could be made public. Not yet, anyway. The risks were too high. The resonator's core was powered by a rare energy source that had only been discovered in the last few decades. The material had the ability to tap into the very fabric of space itself, amplifying energy to create force fields or even direct energy blasts that could alter the course of battle. But the technology was far from perfect. No one had ever used it on such a large scale before. The alien ship's sheer size and advanced capabilities were unknown variables. The scientists weren't sure if the resonator could even stand up to such power. Meanwhile, outside the facility, the world watched helplessly as the alien ship continued to hover. The tension was growing unbearable, and there were whispers of panic spreading through the global community. Some people believed the aliens were testing humanity's resolve, while others feared an invasion was imminent. Riots began to break out in major cities, people desperate for answers, desperate for protection. Governments were on edge, unsure whether to continue diplomacy or prepare for war. But behind closed doors, decisions were being made that could change everything. "Activated," a voice commanded from the control room, breaking the stillness. The order was clear, and the room filled with the sound of machinery whirring to life. The resonator was powered up. The device's large, intricate frame began to hum as energy built within its core, and the first hints of a protective shield began to form. The ground shook lightly as the power surged, sending tremors through the earth. On the surface, those nearby could feel the change, a low thrum beneath their feet. Emily Green, still in her lab, felt the faint pulse of energy, and her heart skipped a beat. What was that? A ripple in the air. A vibration. Her curiosity piqued. She turned her attention to the source of the disturbance. Back at the underground facility, Dr. Patel and his team monitored the readings. They knew that once the resonator was fully activated, the energy field would extend outward, enveloping the Earth in a protective shield. The scientists hoped that the field would act as a deterrent to any aggressive move by the alien ship. They also hoped it would send a signal to the aliens that humanity wasn't defenseless, that it had the means to fight back. "We're ready," Dr. Patel said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Let's see if it works." As the device reached its full potential, a shimmering, translucent shield began to materialize in the sky, stretching across the atmosphere like an invisible barrier. It didn't block the ship outright, but the air seemed to hum with energy, as though the atmosphere itself was now charged. The alien ship, still hovering silently, had not reacted yet. It was as if the ship had been waiting for this very moment. Emily Green stared at the screen in front of her, watching the shield form. Her instincts told her that something was about to happen, something that would change the course of the next few hours. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Would this new weapon be enough to protect humanity from whatever the aliens had in store? Or was the resonator's power just a feeble attempt to stand up to a force far beyond human comprehension? As the shield continued to take shape, the world held its breath, waiting to see if Earth's final defense would be enough, or if it was already too late. The showdown. The world had been holding its collective breath for days as the alien ship hovered in the sky, its silent presence casting a shadow over the planet. Now, with the resonator's energy shield pulsing in the atmosphere, humanity's fragile sense of hope hung on a single thread. The global tension had reached a breaking point, and everyone was waiting for the inevitable moment when the alien ship would make its next move. The question wasn't if something was going to happen, but when. Dr. Emily Green watched in disbelief as the protective shield shimmered above the Earth. The resonator had created an invisible barrier that surrounded the planet, but she couldn't help but wonder if it would be enough. She had seen the data. The shield had never been tested against anything like this before. The alien technology, the ship itself, was unlike anything humanity had encountered. They had no way of knowing how the aliens would react to such an unprecedented move. Would they retreat, seeing humanity's power? Or would they retaliate, testing Earth's defenses? Across the world, people were glued to their screens, watching as military forces assembled beneath the shield, preparing for the worst. Governments had been in constant communication, trying to coordinate their efforts. But with the alien ship still unmoving, there were no immediate signs of aggression. The world's armies stood ready, but they were also in the dark. Without understanding the alien technology, they had no way of knowing how to respond if the aliens decided to escalate the situation. Then, without warning, the ship moved. The giant craft, which had been still for so long, suddenly shifted in the sky. It wasn't a quick movement. It was slow and deliberate, as though the ship was preparing for something monumental. The alien ship tilted slightly, and for the first time, the world saw the full extent of its size and power. It had been hovering so high in the atmosphere that its sheer scale hadn't been fully visible. Now, as it descended a few hundred feet, the true enormity of the ship became apparent. The tension in the air thickened. The glowing, shimmering shield that surrounded Earth seemed to hum in response, as if aware of the approaching threat. The ground beneath Dr. Green's feet vibrated as the ship drew closer, its enormous presence filling the sky. There was no denying it now. A confrontation was coming. Then came the first sound, the low rumble of the ship's engines powering up. It was a noise unlike any other, vibrating through the air with a deep, resonant frequency. It wasn't just sound, it was felt. The entire atmosphere seemed to tremble as the ship's engines activated, sending waves of energy rippling outward. In the military command centers, generals and officials scrambled to assess the situation. The shield was holding, but they didn't know how much longer it would last against whatever the aliens had planned. It was clear that this wasn't going to be a peaceful exchange. The ship had come with a purpose, and that purpose was not clear yet. And then it happened. A sudden burst of energy shot from the ship, not a laser or missile, but something far more sophisticated. The blast was a wave of pure force, rippling through the air like a shockwave. It wasn't aimed at Earth itself. It was directed at the shield. The energy hit the barrier with a force that sent a wave of power rippling through the atmosphere, momentarily shaking every city on Earth. For a brief second, it felt like the shield was going to falter, to crumble under the alien force. But then, the shield held. The resonator's barrier remained intact, shimmering brighter than ever as it absorbed the energy. It was a direct hit. A test, perhaps, but the shield didn't break. It pulsed with energy, as if pushing back against the alien blast. The alien ship hovered silently for a moment, perhaps evaluating the results. Dr. Green felt her heart race. The ship had tested the shield, and it had withstood. But what would the aliens do next? Would they continue to test humanity, or would they escalate? The tension was unbearable. Then, just as quickly as the blast had come, the ship seemed to retract slightly. It wasn't retreating, but it was momentarily pausing. The screen in front of Emily flickered as data poured in from all over the globe. The alien ship hadn't broken the shield, but the force of the blast had caused ripples in the energy field. The resonator was working. Barely. "Emily, look at this," John Ramirez called out from across the lab. "There's a secondary energy source coming from the ship. It's changing frequency." Emily leaned over to his side, her eyes widening as she saw the readings. The ship was adjusting its strategy, shifting its energy patterns. It wasn't done yet. The aliens had only just begun their test. Outside, people were beginning to panic. The sound of sirens filled the streets as military jets soared overhead, and evacuation orders were issued in major cities. The alien ship was not just a threat. It was a living, evolving challenge. Humanity was faced with a foe whose technology was beyond anything Earth had ever known. But humanity was also showing its resilience. The shield was still up, and the resonator was still functioning. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a complete guarantee of safety, but it was their only hope. The world's attention turned to the skies once more, awaiting the next move. Then, as the alien ship shifted again, a new set of symbols appeared in the sky, projected by the ship's technology. These symbols were more intricate, more aggressive, almost as if they were challenging humanity. They were accompanied by a low, vibrating hum, a sound that seemed to resonate deep within the core of every human being. It was as if the aliens were making their intentions clear. In that moment, the true weight of the situation hit home for everyone. This wasn't just a display of power, it was a challenge. A test not just of humanity's defenses, but of humanity's spirit. The aliens were waiting for a response, not just in terms of military strength, but in resolve. The countdown had begun. Humanity had one choice: stand its ground and fight back, or fold under the weight of an alien force far greater than anything the world had ever imagined. The decision would determine the future of Earth, and it had to be made now. The final showdown was about to begin. Unexpected allies. The tension on Earth was palpable, thicker than ever before. The alien ship, with its impenetrable size and incomprehensible technology, continued to hover above the planet, sending shockwaves of fear and anticipation across the globe. The energy shield, while holding, flickered slightly under the pressure, but humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. Military forces were on high alert, preparing for a confrontation that could determine the fate of Earth itself. The resonator was still active, but no one could predict how long it would last against the growing intensity of the alien ship's power. As the situation continued to escalate, the world's governments were forced to make a choice. Would they continue preparing for war, or would they try to seek some form of peace? The aliens had sent a clear message with their test of the resonator's shield. This wasn't going to be easy, and whatever came next would require all of humanity's strength, intelligence, and unity. But in the midst of this chaos, something unexpected happened. A message, unlike any that had come from the alien ship or the Earth's communications, appeared on the screen of every government official, military leader, and scientist. We are not all aligned. At first, the message made little sense. No one understood who it was from or what it meant. The image that accompanied the message showed a flickering symbol, one that resembled the glowing patterns previously displayed by the alien ship, but with subtle differences. It was almost as if it was a different form of alien communication. A small group of scientists, including Dr. Emily Green, had been working to decode this mysterious transmission, but the answers were few and far between. The message continued. The fleet you face is not united. Some of us believe in peace. The room fell silent. In a world consumed by the fear of an impending alien war, this unexpected message was nothing short of a revelation. The possibility that not all the alien visitors shared the same goals sent shockwaves through the command centers and the global scientific community. Could it be true? Was there a faction of aliens who didn't support the invasion, or the hostile actions of their fleet? As Dr. Green worked with her colleagues to analyze the transmission, the implications began to settle in. It was a glimmer of hope, but also a new complexity in the situation. Humanity was faced with the possibility that its enemies might not be entirely unified, and that there might be a way to negotiate, or even ally with, certain factions of the alien forces. It was in this moment of uncertainty that an even more astonishing event took place. A small, unmarked vessel, far smaller and more subtle than the massive alien ship, descended slowly from the sky. It didn't carry the same destructive energy or terrifying presence. Instead, it moved carefully, almost as if it were making a quiet entry into Earth's atmosphere. Military radar detected the ship's approach, but it wasn't treated with the same aggression as the larger ship. The initial thought was that it could be some sort of scout or reconnaissance vessel, but when it landed, the message became clear. A small group of humanoid figures emerged from the vessel. They were unlike the intimidating beings that had appeared in the projections from the alien ship. These individuals were smaller, less armored, their movements more deliberate and peaceful. They wore no weapons, only simple, glowing insignias that marked them as members of a faction different from the one controlling the massive ship hovering above Earth. The figures spoke, though their words weren't in any recognizable language. Instead, their communication was accompanied by visual patterns, holographic symbols, and pulses of light, which slowly took form into a universal translator for those watching. The humans around the world who were watching this spectacle were stunned as the translation emerged. We are the renegades. We are against the invasion. The words echoed across the globe, and for the first time in days, there was a collective pause of disbelief. The leader of this small group, who appeared to be the spokesperson, stepped forward. Their face was more humanoid, but their features were distinctly alien, slightly elongated eyes, and skin that shimmered in an otherworldly way, reflecting the light in odd angles. They spoke again, using a blend of visuals and sound that was now fully comprehensible to the humans gathered. We have been watching you. The fleet that hovers above your world is part of a larger plan, one of conquest, destruction, and control. But we are not all aligned with their methods. Many of us, including myself, disagree with the directive to invade. The world listened in stunned silence as the alien figure continued. We seek peace, not war, but we need your help. The fleet above your world does not care about your survival. They view you as a resource, a world to be conquered. We, the renegades, wish to protect your species. We ask for your trust, for a chance to show you that not all who come from the stars are your enemies. A murmur rippled through the crowd watching this extraordinary exchange. Earth was not just facing an alien invasion anymore. It was facing a dilemma far more complex. There was a faction of the aliens willing to join forces with humanity, to rebel against their own fleet. But could humanity trust them? Could Earth afford to take a risk on a group that had once been part of the very force threatening to destroy them? Dr. Green was the first to speak up in the UN's emergency meeting, her voice trembling with both hope and skepticism. We can't ignore this. If they're telling the truth, this is our chance to not only survive, but to potentially forge a new future. But we can't act blindly. We need more information. The renegade leader nodded solemnly. I will take you to our safe haven. We have technology that will help your world understand ours. There is much more to this conflict than you know. And there is a faction of our fleet that controls the future of your planet. We must act quickly before they strike. The next moments were a whirlwind of decisions. Should humanity take the risk and trust these renegades? What if they were a trap? But with no other choice and no guarantee of survival, Earth's leaders agreed to cautiously align with the renegades. This alliance, uncertain as it was, became humanity's last hope for survival. As the renegades began to prepare for their journey with human representatives, a strange silence hung in the air. It was a strange kind of suspense, an uneasy tension of two worlds coming together with the hope of overcoming the threat from above. But the question still lingered. Was this alliance a lifeline, or was it another step into the unknown? One thing was clear. The fight for Earth was no longer just against the alien invaders. It was now a battle for control within the stars themselves, and humanity was right in the center of it all. The final decision. The renegades, a small faction of the alien race, had made their offer clear. They were willing to join forces with humanity to stop the invasion. They promised technology that could help Earth fight back against the larger, more aggressive faction of their species. But despite their words, the decision to trust them was not an easy one. Humanity had been on the edge of annihilation for days, and every move now seemed to hold the weight of life or death for the entire planet. The world had seen too many betrayals, too many promises broken. Could they really trust a group of aliens who had once been part of the very force, threatening Earth's survival? Or was this a clever ruse, a trap set to lull humanity into complacency before the true invasion began? The international summit that took place in the aftermath of the Renegade's offer was filled with an air of cautious optimism and deep mistrust. Governments were torn between the immediate need for help and the looming fear of being deceived. Earth had never been more vulnerable, and the clock was ticking. The alien ship still loomed above them, its presence a constant reminder that any hesitation could be fatal. Dr. Emily Green stood with a group of scientists and military leaders, watching the final preparations. The renegades had provided data, evidence of their claims, and much of it seemed genuine. They had offered details of the alien fleet's structure, their weaknesses, and even offered blueprints for technology that could disrupt the communication channels of the invaders. But trust, in this case, was a fragile thing. The renegades spoke of factions, of internal strife within their species. They had once been part of the same empire, but now they stood against it, believing the invasion was wrong. And yet, some part of Dr. Green's mind couldn't shake the fear that this could be an elaborate manipulation. How could they be sure? "We have no other choice," said General Andrews, a seasoned military officer who had seen his share of war, both on Earth and in the realms of political power. His voice was firm, and yet there was doubt in his eyes. "If we don't act now, that ship above us will destroy everything we've worked for. We need their help." Emily took a deep breath. The burden of the decision was too heavy to bear alone. Her mind raced with questions, trying to connect the dots. The Renegade's offer wasn't just a plea for survival. It was a chance to change the course of the galaxy. They could be humanity's key to survival, or they could be leading them down a path of ruin. After hours of deliberation, it was decided. Humanity would accept the Renegades' alliance. They would risk everything for the chance of survival, and they would put their trust in these aliens who had chosen the path of rebellion against their own kind. The final stages of preparation were tense. The Renegade ships, small but swift, hovered just beyond the Earth's atmosphere. They had agreed to take a group of human representatives aboard their vessel, where they would discuss the strategy in greater detail and prepare to infiltrate the alien fleet. As the representatives boarded the Renegade ships, Emily and John Ramirez were among the first. They had spent weeks analyzing the data, but now they had to face the unknown. There was no turning back. Once they left Earth's surface, the safety of humanity would rest entirely on their ability to outsmart the invaders and to trust their new alien allies. Up in space, the massive alien ship above Earth had not moved. It was waiting for the next step in this complex game. The fleet that had arrived with such overwhelming power had been quiet, seemingly content to observe for the moment. But everyone knew the truth. It was waiting for humanity to make its move. The question remained, would humanity be ready? Inside the Renegade ship, Emily looked around. The atmosphere was unlike anything she had expected. The ship was sleek and futuristic, with technology far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. The Renegades, though clearly not like the invaders in terms of appearance, were still a species so alien that their motives and actions were difficult to understand. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. The Renegade leader, the same one who had first made contact with Earth, turned to her. His expression was grave, but his eyes held a flicker of something: hope. "We have fought this war for years, Emily Green. I've seen what your species is capable of. You have something we don't: resilience. If we can convince enough of the fleet to stand down, we will stop this invasion." John stepped forward, his expression fierce. "And if we can't convince them, what happens then?" The Renegade leader paused, and for a moment, the uncertainty hung in the air. "Then we fight. Together." The Renegades had a plan, a way to infiltrate the command center of the invading fleet. The human and Renegade alliance would provide the perfect cover. They would create a diversion to allow a small team to board the flagship of the invaders. The goal was simple: disable their leadership, create chaos among the ranks, and disrupt their ability to communicate. But time was running out. The alien fleet's patience had limits, and there was no telling how much longer they would tolerate the peaceful talks. Emily's heart pounded as she considered the stakes. Failure would mean Earth's destruction, but success could lead to the most incredible peace the galaxy had ever known. As the plan unfolded, a final message from the Renegade leader appeared on the screen of every human command center. "It is time to decide. Will we be the authors of our own fate, or will we be swept away by a force greater than ourselves? Together, we are stronger than the sum of our parts. Trust in us, and we will rewrite the stars." It was a call to action, a final plea for unity. Earth's fate now rested in the hands of both its own people and the unexpected allies they had found in the stars. The countdown had begun. The last battle would determine the future, not just of Earth, but of the entire galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was whether humanity could take the final step into the unknown and prove that they were ready for what came next.